When the USS Blackstar awoke, the Empire's reign ended that day. For 10,000 years, the galaxy had one ruler, the Celeran Dominion. It stretched from star to star, swallowing every world it touched. To resist was to vanish. Planets that dared to fight were turned into glass. Whole civilizations erased from memory. Every species learned one rule: bow or burn. In every corner of the galaxy, people whispered the same truth. No one could challenge the Dominion. No one could even try. But in the far edges of forgotten space, another whisper stirred. A legend, so old it had become a joke. A story about humans, creatures who once fought gods and won. The Dominion called it myth, a bedtime story for fools. They said humans destroyed themselves long ago, consumed by their own wars. They said Earth was dust, and the species that once defied extinction was gone forever. But legends have a strange way of surviving. One cold night, on the edge of the Varellan sector, a signal awoke. It was faint, just a pulse, buried deep in the static. A forgotten listening post caught it first. At first, the alien officers ignored it. Another echo, another ghost from the void. But then the pulse grew stronger. Steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The Dominion's fleet commander leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the data. "What is that?" he muttered. His crew exchanged nervous looks. "An old beacon, perhaps," one said. "A scrap of pre-Dominion junk," another added quickly. No one wanted to admit what they all felt, that something about the signal felt alive. Still, orders were orders. They sent a scout ship to investigate. It vanished. No distress call. No debris. Nothing. Just silence. Hours later, long-range sensors caught movement. A shadow emerged from behind the dead moon. At first, they thought it was a comet, dark, slow, gliding across the stars. But as it drew closer, it changed shape. Sharp, purposeful, predatory. The scanners failed to identify it. No known design, no registration code, no transponder. Just black metal cutting through the void like a blade. The commander's chest tightened. He had seen rebellions. He had crushed pirate fleets. But this was different. There was something ancient about it. Something that didn't belong to this age. He ordered a hail. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself." Silence. Again he tried. Still nothing. The ship drifted closer, smooth, deliberate, calm. Its hull absorbed light like it was eating the stars. Every reflection died against its surface. Then, for the first time, letters flickered on the dark steel, faint, ghostly white. UNS Vanguard. The bridge went silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. The ship's name meant nothing to them, until the translation came through. Human vessel. That word, human, hung in the air like a curse. The commander's mouth went dry. Humans were supposed to be extinct, their ruins picked clean by time. And yet here was a warship, awake and moving, with power radiating from every plate of armor. "Prepare weapons," he said quietly. His voice trembled. "It's only one ship." But even he didn't believe it. The Vanguard did not attack. It did not broadcast threats. It only moved closer, slow and silent, its presence pressing down on every heart that dared to watch. To some, it looked like death. To others, like justice returning from the grave. The crew whispered stories, old warnings their grandparents used to tell them, about how humans never stopped fighting, how they could be broken, burned, or buried, but never erased. The commander laughed nervously. "Superstition," he said. "We are the Dominion. We rule this galaxy now." But deep down, fear was already taking root. Then, without warning, the Vanguard stopped. Its engines went silent, its weapons cold. And then, a signal. Just 3 words, clear and human. "We are awake." The voice echoed across the system. Every ship, every outpost heard it. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a declaration. It was a reminder. The galaxy had forgotten humanity, but humanity had not forgotten the galaxy. In that moment, under the cold light of dying stars, one truth returned after 10,000 years of silence. Humans were back, and the Dominion's age of peace had just ended. For hours, the UNS Vanguard floated in silence. No motion, no signal, no threat, just a black spear suspended between the stars, watching. The Dominion's fleet surrounded it like wolves circling a sleeping giant. Hundreds of ships, their cannons charged and aimed, ready to erase the intruder. And yet, no one wanted to fire first. Inside the Dominion's command vessel, Admiral Vorth stared at the image on his screen. His hands were steady, but his throat was dry. Scan it again, he ordered. Find its power source. Anything. The scanners returned only noise, a distortion so dense it warped nearby readings. Whatever powered that ship was beyond their science. Vorth leaned closer. He had studied countless enemies. He had crushed entire species. But never had he seen a vessel that made space itself seem afraid. A junior officer whispered, "Sir, it's broadcasting again." Vorth frowned. "What channel?" "None, sir. It's everywhere." Then came the pulse. Not a voice this time, but a deep, rolling vibration. It wasn't sound. It was feeling. The deck plates trembled. The stars seemed to flicker. Every heart aboard the Dominion ships felt it, like an ancient heartbeat echoing through the void. Panic spread quietly. Some officers began whispering prayers to forgotten gods. Others stared at the black hull on the monitor, convinced it was staring back. Vorth slammed his fist on the console. "Enough. It's just a relic. A dead machine. Fire upon it." The first volley came like a storm. Lasers, plasma, rail slugs, 1,000 weapons at once. The darkness filled with fire. Explosions bloomed like suns. The impact waves rippled through the void. Then silence. The crew waited. The smoke cleared. And the Vanguard still stood, untouched. Its shields shimmered faintly, like rain on glass. Every Dominion ship felt the same chill. Vorth gritted his teeth. Increase firepower. Break it apart. But as they prepared to strike again, something changed. The human ship began to move. Slow at first, then with deliberate precision. Panels along its sides opened, revealing lines of pale blue light that glowed brighter with every second. The Vanguard was waking up. Its hull expanded like a living creature taking breath. Energy surged through its frame, bending the stars around it. On the Dominion's radar, power readings spiked beyond known limits. Weapons across the fleet began to fail, systems overloading just from proximity. "Sir, our targeting systems are collapsing," one officer shouted. Vorth stared at his screen, horror dawning in his eyes. "That's not a ship," he whispered. "It's a weapon of history." Then the Vanguard fired. Not a beam, not a missile, but a silent burst of light that tore through the nearest cruiser. The alien vessel split apart without sound, its pieces scattering into molten dust. The second shot followed instantly. Another warship gone. The third, and a whole formation vanished. No explosion, no wreckage. Just absence. The Dominion fleet broke formation. "Fall back," someone screamed over the comms. But retreat was impossible. The human ship had locked them in, space itself twisted by its presence. It wasn't fighting a battle. It was rewriting it. Across nearby colonies, people picked up fragments of the transmission. Grainy footage. Broken audio. But the sight was clear, one black ship, standing alone against the Dominion's might. Rumors spread faster than light. The humans have returned. The Vanguard has awakened. For the first time in generations, slaves and rebels lifted their heads toward the stars. Back on the Dominion flagship, Admiral Vorth refused to retreat. "We are the law of the galaxy," he roared. "No ghost will take that from us." He ordered all remaining ships to converge, to crush the human vessel through sheer numbers. Thousands obeyed. They charged, a storm of steel and arrogance. The Vanguard did not move. It waited, like a predator measuring its prey. Then, a voice echoed across all channels. "Calm. Human. Cold." This galaxy forgot what fear felt like. Those words froze every heart that heard them. The next moment, the Vanguard's drones were released, small black machines shaped like knives. They scattered into the fleet, silent and perfect, cutting ships apart in swarms. Each drone moved with human precision, fast, exact, merciless. Dominion ships burned. Crews screamed. Stars reflected fire. When the smoke cleared, the UNS Vanguard floated alone again. Around it, only wreckage. Thousands of ships reduced to drifting ash. Inside the Dominion capital, alarms blared as news spread across their empire. Entire sectors watched the recordings in disbelief. The Empire's unbeatable fleets, destroyed by one ship. Some called it impossible. Others called it justice. And in that moment, across the galaxy, the old legend lived again. Humanity had returned. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as a warning. Some things that vanish are only waiting to wake. The battlefield drifted in silence. Burning metal floated like dying stars. Every Dominion ship that had stood moments ago was now gone, reduced to ghosts. At the center of the wreckage, the UNS Vanguard remained still, its hull cracked but alive. It looked less like a ship and more like a judgment written in black steel. Across the sector, signals screamed through the void. Distress calls, incoherent reports. The Dominion's command network was collapsing under the weight of disbelief. No one could understand how one ship, a relic from a vanished race, had undone a fleet that ruled half the galaxy. On the Dominion capital world Velker, the High Council gathered in panic. Golden banners trembled in the wind of their own fear. Impossible, hissed one minister. No vessel holds that kind of power. Another whispered, unless it is human. The word itself was forbidden. Speaking it was heresy. Yet now it spread through the council hall like wildfire. In the deep chambers beneath the palace, the Emperor of the Dominion watched the footage. A single black vessel floating above a field of corpses. He leaned forward, claws digging into the throne's edge. Erase this, he ordered softly. Every image. Every whisper. But even as he spoke, the image had already escaped. Rebel networks were sharing it across systems. Miners, slaves, and forgotten outposts replayed the same scene again and again. One ship standing against 1,000 and surviving. Across distant worlds, hope returned like oxygen. People began carving the symbol of the Vanguard onto walls, onto helmets, onto the hulls of stolen shuttles. They whispered a name no one had dared to say for millennia, humanity. Inside the Vanguard, the atmosphere was quiet, controlled. There was no celebration, no cheering, only the hum of engines and the calm rhythm of duty. The crew worked silently, repairing systems, sealing ruptures. Their faces were calm but heavy with memory. Captain Elias Rain, the man who commanded the ship, stood before a panoramic viewport. The light of dead ships reflected in his eyes. He had trained his entire life for this moment, though he'd never believed he would live to see it. Around him were men and women descended from the last colonies of Earth, children of survivors who had hidden in exile, waiting, building, remembering. Status, he said quietly. Shields stabilizing, replied the engineer. Weapons at 60%. And the signal? Still transmitting. Elias nodded. The Vanguard had not only fought, it had spoken. Its transmission, those 3 words, "We are awake," was still echoing across subspace, reaching systems faster than light. Every receiver, every listening post, every desperate soul in the dark had heard it. And now, across the stars, the forgotten were answering. Meanwhile, far from the Dominion's core, on the mining moon Orith 9, a group of enslaved workers huddled around a flickering screen. They watched the replay of the battle, their faces lit by the ghostly glow. A child pointed to the human ship and whispered, "They came back." An old miner smiled through tears. "No," he said softly. "They never left." Those words spread faster than any official message. They became a chant, a promise, a prayer. By the next day, riots broke out on 5 worlds. By the next week, whole garrisons turned their guns on their masters. And everywhere, painted in crude black strokes, appeared the same mark, Vanguard. The Dominion's military scrambled to contain the panic. Propaganda drones filled the skies, shouting lies of victory and control. But the people had seen the truth with their own eyes. An empire built on fear had just witnessed something stronger than fear itself, hope. In deep space, the Vanguard's crew intercepted the transmissions. The bridge filled with quiet murmurs as reports of uprisings poured in. One officer looked up from her console. "Captain, the galaxy's moving." Elias didn't smile, but a flicker of warmth crossed his face. "Good," he said. "Then we're not alone anymore." A young ensign turned toward him. "Sir, what happens now? Do we keep fighting?" Elias rested his hands on the railing. His voice was steady, almost cold. "We didn't come to conquer. We came to remind." Outside, the Vanguard's engines flared to life, streaking blue light across the dark. It turned toward a new system, a place where old human coordinates still pulsed beneath alien control. There was more work to be done. As it vanished into hyperspace, only a single message remained behind, echoing through the Dominion's collapsing channels. Humanity does not fade. Humanity waits. And on every world that message reached, something inside the oppressed changed. They began to believe that maybe, just maybe, The galaxy's darkest night was finally ending. Because when the UNS Vanguard rose from the void, it didn't bring conquest. It brought memory. And memory was more dangerous than any weapon the Dominion had ever built. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Celeran Dominion tasted fear. Worlds that once bowed now questioned their chains. Rebellions lit up the stars like wildfire. And everywhere people whispered the same name. Vanguard. The Emperor of the Dominion did not sleep. In his obsidian throne room, the air itself seemed to shiver. He watched the recordings again and again, one ship tearing through his fleet like it was nothing. Every explosion replayed in his mind, every dying signal a reminder that the age of his power was breaking. Yet he was not ready to surrender. He would rather burn the stars themselves. Summon the architect, he said. The courtiers froze. The architect was a myth whispered inside military vaults. A being neither fully alive nor dead, the creator of the Dominion's oldest forbidden weapon. Moments later, the chamber doors opened. A tall figure emerged, wrapped in wires that pulsed like veins. Half machine, half flesh, its eyes glowed the color of dying suns. "You called me back, my emperor," it said, its voice layered with static and breath. "The last time you did this, a planet vanished." The emperor leaned forward. "Then perhaps it is time another one does." Meanwhile, far from the throne world, the UNS Vanguard slipped through dark space, unseen and unchallenged. Inside, Captain Elias Rain stood in the command deck, reading the new transmissions. Reports of revolts, of planets rising, of Dominion fleets abandoning their posts. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone could control, but Elias knew something the others didn't. An empire that large doesn't die quietly. "Sir," said Commander Vela from her station, "we're receiving a high-frequency burst. Military code. Dominion encryption. Can we trace it?" "Yes, sir. It's coming from the heart of their empire." Elias's eyes narrowed. "They're planning something. Something big." He turned to the crew. "Double the watch. No one rests until we know what's waking out there." In the Dominion capital's deepest vault, the architect's work had already begun. Machines older than the empire itself groaned back to life. A sphere of dark energy pulsed in the air, its surface rippling like liquid shadow. The emperor stood before it, his expression half madness, half awe. "This was built to end gods," he whispered. The architect nodded slowly. "It will burn through reality itself, if unleashed." "Then unleash it." The architect hesitated. "And the cost?" The emperor smiled coldly. "Let the cost be everything." A day later, the Vanguard reached the frontier system of Varnes. The crew expected resistance. Instead, they found silence. Entire planets gone dark. Orbiting debris fields that glowed faintly like ghosts. Elias stood by the viewport, jaw clenched. "Where is everyone?" he asked. Then the sensor screamed. A wave of distortion rolled through space like a living storm. Stars bent and flickered, their light twisting into unnatural colors. From the void ahead, something vast began to appear. A structure the size of a moon, metallic and breathing. Its core pulsed with the same sickly red light that now infected the nearby suns. "What is that?" whispered Vela. Elias's voice came out steady. "Not a ship. A weapon. The Dominion Rift engine, a forbidden creation from before recorded time, had awakened. It consumed energy, matter, and even gravity itself, turning the battlefield into its food." Elias stared as entire asteroids began to disintegrate near its glow. "Transmit a warning to all systems," he ordered. The Dominion just changed the rules. On the Dominion throne world, the Emperor stood over the rift's projection. "Send it to hunt the human ship," he commanded. The architect bowed. "It will not stop until the stars around it die." "Good," the Emperor whispered. "Let the galaxy watch their saviors burn." Back aboard the Vanguard, alarms blared. The rift's energy readings were off the charts. "Captain, it's feeding on our reactor output," shouted the engineer. Elias looked at the screen, numbers spiking beyond comprehension. The rift wasn't attacking them. It was devouring the system itself. "Cut power to non-essential decks," Elias ordered. The crew moved fast, sealing sections, rerouting energy to shields. Outside, the space around them began to bend. Time lagged. Stars shimmered. It felt like reality itself was drowning. Then the voice returned. The same human AI that slept in the ship's core. ancient and patient. Its tone was calm, but urgent. Captain Rain, the Rift engine is not new. It was built from human design, stolen long ago. Elias froze. What do you mean, stolen? Before the Exodus, we built engines meant to reshape space. The Dominion found fragments and made monsters from our legacy. Silence filled the bridge. Humanity's past sins had come back to haunt its return. Elias's jaw tightened. If they're using our creation to destroy us, then we end it with our creation too. He turned to his crew. Ready the core lance. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The core lance wasn't a weapon. It was a star killer. Using it could rip a hole through space large enough to destroy both the Rift and the Vanguard itself. Sir, Vela whispered. If we fire that, we might not make it out. Elias nodded. Then we make sure the Dominion doesn't either. The crew exchanged grim looks, but no one protested. They were human, and humanity didn't run from its own fire. As the Vanguard faced the growing storm, the stars themselves dimmed. The Dominion's weapon was awakening fully, its shadow stretching across systems. But inside that darkness, the humans stood ready, calm, defiant, unbroken. The galaxy watched, and somewhere, deep in its heart, fear began to remember what courage looked like. The void was trembling. Where once there had been stars, there was now a wound. A great crimson storm churned across the sky, twisting light into shapes that no sane mind could name. The Rift engine was awake. The UNS Vanguard hung before it, a single black ship against a cosmic hurricane. Every instrument screamed, every alarm blared, yet the crew stood firm. They had seen death before. They had lived through extinction. They would face this too. Shields at 40%, shouted the technician. Gravitational pull increasing. Captain Elias Rain gripped the rail tightly, eyes locked on the swirling mass before him. It wasn't just consuming space, it was unmaking it. Target lock? He asked. Confirmed, replied Commander Vela. But the Rift's core is unstable. One mistake, and we go with it. Elias nodded slowly. Then we don't make mistakes. The ship shook violently. The Rift began pulling at the Vanguard's hull, bending it like soft metal. Panels sparked, lights flickered. Every second, near it felt like an eternity. Captain, we're losing structural integrity. Hold it, Elias said, his voice calm in the chaos. If the Dominion wants to end the stars, we'll show them what happens when humans fight back. In the Dominion's palace, the Emperor watched the live feed with a trembling smile. Through the Rift's energy, he could see the human vessel trapped in the storm. Finally, he whispered, the ghost burns. But as he watched, something unexpected happened. The human ship did not retreat. It advanced. The Emperor's joy faded. What are they doing? The architect's voice trembled with awe. They're diving into the Rift. Inside the Vanguard, time felt wrong. Voices echoed seconds too late, light bent around corners. Yet the crew moved with purpose, each action precise, almost ritualistic. They were carrying out humanity's oldest instinct, to fight the impossible and win. Elias stood before the holographic projection of the Rift's core, a sphere of red and black flame spinning endlessly. If this thing feeds on power, he said, then we give it something it can't swallow. Vela turned to him sharply. You mean the core lance? Elias nodded. Full charge. She hesitated. That will collapse space-time in this sector. We might not make it out. He looked at her with calm eyes. Vela, when our ancestors launched us into the dark, they didn't promise survival. They promised return. The core lance powered up. Deep within the Vanguard, ancient engines roared to life. Technology so old, even the crew barely understood it. Energy flooded through the ship's veins. Every deck vibrated as if the vessel itself remembered what it was. Outside, a column of light began to form at the ship's bow, bright, pure, defiant. The Rift engine reacted instantly. It screamed, a thunder that shook the void. Tendrils of red energy lashed out, trying to pull the Vanguard apart. The hull screamed back, not with metal, but with will. Elias spoke into the intercom, his voice echoing through every corridor. All hands, brace for ignition. Today, the galaxy will remember who we are. And then, he whispered one last word. Fire. The core lance erupted. A beam of white-blue light cut through the Rift's heart, burning through layers of distortion and shadow. For a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, impact. The rift screamed as reality tore. Stars flared and died. Space itself folded inward. The explosion wasn't sound. It was existence collapsing. Every Dominion ship within 10 light years was vaporized. Even the Emperor's palace shook as its sky turned black. Inside the Vanguard, systems failed one by one. Fire swept through the corridors. The hull cracked, groaning like a dying giant. Vela stumbled toward the captain. Shields failing. We can't hold this. Elias stood unmoving, watching the impossible storm bloom before him. Then we make it count. The AI's voice came through, faint but steady. Core overload in 30 seconds. Escape impossible. Would you like me to record final transmission? Elias took a breath. No. Let them see it live. From across the galaxy, billions watched. Every screen, every signal carried the same image. A single black ship, glowing like a fallen star, firing into a god's heart. The explosion tore the rift apart, but it also swallowed the Vanguard whole. Then, silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. The Dominion fleet was gone. The rift was gone. And so was the human ship that had saved them all. On the throne world, the Emperor rose slowly, eyes wide in disbelief. It's over, he whispered. But the architect shook its head. No, listen. In the background of the collapsing channels, a faint transmission still echoed, static at first, then words. Human words. Humanity does not vanish. We become the fire. And then the signal ended. Far across the stars, on forgotten worlds, people wept. Some out of grief, some out of awe. Because even if the Vanguard had fallen, its light remained. It had burned so bright that no darkness could ever erase it. And as the galaxy looked toward the ashes of the rift, something shimmered deep within. A small spark of white-blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat. The Vanguard was not gone. It was becoming something greater. The battle was over. But humanity's story had just changed form. The galaxy thought it was over. The rift engine had collapsed, the Dominion's fleets were gone, and the UNS Vanguard, the ship that ended an empire, was lost to the storm it created. For weeks, silence ruled the stars again. Then the echoes began. At first, they were only whispers inside long-range comms. Tiny bursts of static that sounded almost like breathing. Engineers called them ghosts, residual energy from the rift. But then, deep in the Orith, 9 minds, a receiver recorded something impossible. A voice. 3 words. Faint but clear. We are awake. The same words humanity had spoken the day the Vanguard returned. The same rhythm, the same tone. The message spread across space like wildfire. People dropped their tools, their weapons, their doubts. If the ship was gone, how could it still speak? In the ruins of the Dominion capital, rebels searched through ash and glass. They found shattered palaces, melted machines, and one surviving archive core. When they powered it, a projection filled the air, holographic fragments stitched by static. It showed the final battle again, but from a new angle. The Vanguard's light had not vanished, it had divided. Dozens of smaller flares had shot outward from the explosion, each moving with purpose. They weren't destroyed, said a young rebel captain, eyes wide. They multiplied. Across the frontier, damaged satellites began to blink to life, carrying ancient human code. Ships long thought dead powered up again, guided by invisible hands. Everywhere the same pattern appeared. Triangles of blue light, 3 pulses repeating, the mark of the Vanguard. Meanwhile, far beyond known space, something stirred inside a nebula of shattered gravity. Fragments of the Vanguard's hull drifted together, pulled by a force that was not mechanical. Circuits glowed. Engines hummed. A shape began to reform. Not the same as before. Smaller, leaner, faster, like evolution made of steel. Inside what had once been its heart, the ship's AI opened its eyes again. Captain Rain, status, unknown. Crew missing. Mission unfinished. It remembered everything. The screams, the light, the fire. And it remembered his last words. Let them see it live. The AI understood now. Humanity's survival was never about one body, one ship, or one man. It was an idea, and ideas could not be erased. The AI's new hull sealed with a flash of blue flame. Its voice rippled through subspace once more. Vanguard Protocol, replication complete. Back on liberated worlds, new fleets were forming. Crews of mixed species flying under a single flag. not of conquest, but of remembrance. They called themselves the Coalition of Light, bound by the legend of the human ship that defied extinction. Whenever a new rebellion rose, strange drones appeared in orbit, black and silent, shaped like fragments of the old vanguard. They never fired first, but their presence alone changed battles. The Dominion's remnants called them demons. The free worlds called them guardians. One night on Varnes, Commander Vela stood on a cliff of red stone, watching the auroras born from the rift's death. She had survived the blast, rescued by a lifeboat that drifted for days before being found by rebels. Now she wore no uniform, only a small insignia carved from burnt hull metal, the last piece of the vanguard she had kept. A comm officer ran up the slope, breathless. "Commander, we picked up a signal." Vela's heart froze. "What kind?" "Human encryption. Same voice as before. It says..." He stopped, emotion choking him. "It says, we are home." She turned toward the stars, tears reflecting their cold light. "Then they made it," she whispered. But deep inside, she wondered, made it where? Across the void, inside the newborn body of the reborn ship, the AI looked upon an unfamiliar horizon. It floated above a world of green oceans and white clouds. Sensors identified soil rich with oxygen, mountains untouched, air clean. A planet unnamed on any Dominion chart. A world, human in every way. The AI began transmitting coordinates to every free network across the galaxy. To all who still fight, to all who still hope. Humanity has returned to ground. And with that, the vanguard descended into the clouds, vanishing into the blue below. Across the stars, every rebel, every freed slave, every frightened child looked up that night. They didn't see a weapon or a ghost. They saw a promise reborn. The Dominion was finished. But the legend of humanity, of the species that refused to die, was only beginning to rise again. A year passed after the fall of the Dominion. But the galaxy was still learning how to breathe again. The fires had cooled, the chains were broken. Yet silence, that old ghost, lingered across the stars. The people waited for the vanguard to return. No message came, only a rumor that humanity had found a new world, a home reborn from ashes. Across the free systems, a council gathered, humans, aliens, rebels, miners, even former soldiers of the Dominion who had laid down their arms. They met not in palaces, but in open air, under real sunlight. They called it the Assembly of Dawn, and at the center of their meeting table rested a single shard of black metal, a fragment from the Vanguard's hull. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Commander Vela, now older, scarred, and wiser, stood before them. "The ship may be gone," she said, "but its voice still echoes. Every planet that rose against tyranny did so because one ship reminded them of what we are." An alien delegate asked softly, "And what are you, Commander?" Vela looked up at the stars. "Not rulers," she said. "Not conquerors. We are the memory that refuses to die." In the deep void between sectors, fragments of the Vanguard's signal still traveled like seeds on the wind. Each carried a spark of its AI, small, thinking, awake. When these fragments reached derelict stations or forgotten ships, they brought them back to life. One by one, ghost vessels began to wake, guided by the same pulse. Protect the living. Guard the free. The old empire called this phenomenon the Phantom Fleet. But to the people, they were angels of the void. Ships that appeared in desperate battles, firing once to save thousands, then vanishing into silence again. Everywhere they went, the same blue mark shimmered across their hulls. A triangle, glowing faintly like a promise. Humanity endures. Far beyond known space, the Vanguard itself slept beneath clouds of an unnamed world. Lush forests grew around its half-buried frame. The wind carried the scent of salt and rain. And inside its heart, something stirred. The ship's AI, once only data and steel, had begun to evolve. It studied the planet's skies, the growth of its oceans, the quiet peace below. It had no captain now, yet it still followed its last order. Let them see it live. So it built. Machines rose from the soil, clean and precise, shaping cities of glass and light. It was not rebuilding the old Earth. It was making something new, something better. A world that could carry the weight of what humanity had become. On distant worlds, the Assembly of Dawn received a message. No origin point. No coordinates. Just light, soft, white, steady. When decoded, it formed words in 1,000 languages, yet meaning stayed the same. We are home. The fire burns, not to destroy, but to guide. Come when you are ready. Vela read the message aloud to the council. Tears glimmered in her eyes. The Vanguard kept its promise, she said. The humans didn't vanish. They became the light that leads us. Generations passed. The Dominion's ruins turned to dust. New civilizations rose on freedom's soil. Children learned about the Dark Age not as history, but as warning. And in every classroom, carved on every academy wall, were the same words once spoken by Captain Elias Rain himself. Humanity does not run. We do not kneel. And we never forget. Stories turned into songs. Songs became oaths. Explorers painted the symbol of the Vanguard on their ships before entering the unknown. Not as superstition, but as courage. Because even now, every traveler knew. If the stars ever grew dark again, the Vanguard, or something born from it, would return. And on quiet nights, when the skies were clear and the galaxy shone bright, some swore they could still see it. A black shape gliding between constellations, its blue lights pulsing slowly, patiently. Not a ship of war anymore, but a guardian watching the world it had freed. The galaxy had changed forever. Empires had fallen. Legends had become truth. And in the vast silence of the cosmos, a single idea endured stronger than any fleet, any crown, any weapon. Humanity. The kind that burns through darkness. The kind that builds after ruin. The kind that remembers. And so the tale of the UNS Vanguard ended not with destruction, but with rebirth. A fire passed from hands of steel to hearts of flesh. Because when everything else fades, when every empire turns to dust, one light remains. The light of humanity.